Once I got to San Diego, that playbook was so much bigger, and now your competition level is higher. And if you're not getting it, what happens? You go home, right? You hear about these guys who can just see the play, and he was one of those guys who would shift a whole defense and get out of position and go to somebody else's position and make the play. That's how much film he'd watch. I was never scared of anybody. We're going to butt heads. If I got to the point where I could really block Junior Seau, who could I not block at that time? You know what I'm saying? We've already went against Kevin Hardy in Illinois and Simeon Rice and LeVar Arrington at Penn State. We didn't win against all these dudes, but we talk about Junior, who was the Ray Lewis of that era.
Welcome to the Gallery and Hurley Unfiltered podcast, Iowa Football Rewind.
Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast player to get a behind-the-scenes look that you won't find anywhere else.
Rodney Filer, fullback from 1993 to 1997 from Houston, Texas. Let me ask you, what size were you when you got to Iowa?
I was 6'3", 225 as a freshman.
I can distinctly remember being in the bubble before a workout, and I saw you do 2 flips and a round off. I looked around, I was like, I do not have that kind of skill. Impressive for a big man when you came in as a freshman.
Yes, sir. So I didn't really start playing football until 9th grade. So I was in high school when I first really started playing football. I played 1 year of Pop Warner when I was younger, and then not until 9th grade. But in between that, I was trying to be a gymnast. I was trying to just turn flips, tumble, all that stuff. That's what took up my time.
Why the slow roll into football then? Like, you just were more interested in gymnastics or family, or like, why is that?
It was the family dynamic. My mom and dad were never officially together. They were together for a while and then went back separate ways or whatever. And I was the miracle that came about from that. So I was my mom's youngest child. And then my father has 3 other daughters, and I got 2 stepbrothers on his side. So I'm the only one of both of my parents. And he wasn't really around, not by fault of his, it's just how the dynamic happened. So I was mainly with my mom. I never had the person to come out and say, hey, you're a pretty athletic kid. Won't you come try football or try different things? So all that came about watching the Kung Fu movies back in the day, watching the guys turn somersaults and all that type of stuff. Kids in the neighborhood just started doing that type of stuff. So that's what I gravitated to, because that's who I was hanging out with, the younger kids, and we went from there. It was the summer of 8th grade is when somebody actually talked to me about football.
Talk to us about your first start in football. What position did you play? How you got started?
Yeah, so a coach came by. Funny story, he came by. The neighborhood I lived in was very neighborhood gang related. So once you got to a certain age, the guys would try to, okay, you're either with us or you're against us, basically. You know what I'm saying? So I was at the age now where they start to recruit you in. I think y'all might have met my mom once, maybe at a bowl game. Mama Barbara wasn't going with that. That wasn't happening. That's my rock. So she was like, no, that's not happening. So one day I was walking home and the group approached me and was trying to get me to join us, or are we going to jump you right now? I told the guy, I was like, okay, I want to fight the biggest one of you. So I chose the biggest one and we started fighting. And I grabbed his shirt and pulled it over his head, and I started getting the best of him. And then all the other guys jumped in, and they started beating me up. And I seen a little opening in the crowd, and I just shot out, and I just took off. But that one coach that I was telling you about earlier, he was at the stop sign, and he seen me just fly by. And then he seen 5 other dudes chasing me. I outran them and got home, and but they weren't coming into my yard because they were younger too. They were just a little bit older than me at that point. So it wasn't like a big, I'm fighting a grown man type deal. But probably 2 weeks after that, that coach called me and said I had some talent and I should probably go out for football next year. And then at that time, because the neighborhood was getting worse, my mom was already making plans to move to Waco, Texas, which is where I ended up graduating from and playing football there. Mama got me out of the rough neighborhood and took me to the country-ish, and probably saved my life.
How far is Waco from Houston?
It's about 2.5. Yeah, so I moved to Waco, went to University High School. Very good high school football program in Texas. Just the area that I moved to was great. Like the playoffs, one year we played LBJ, which is where Cedric and Des Moines went. But they were a year older, so they were at Iowa already. When we came to the point of getting a scholarship and going somewhere, and I was highly recruited because once I started playing football, I was able to do multiple positions. I played outside linebacker, defensive end, and I played running back. So I was a big running back in Texas. We ran a split offense, eventually went to a power I in Texas. The other running back was, he probably top 5 in the state of Texas, probably 2 years in a row, maybe, for his rushing. And then I was decently up there, but I was playing both ways. So we had a pretty good team. I thought he would get highly recruited, but I actually got recruited more than he did. And I don't know if that was grades or whatever the dynamic was for the teams that wanted me, but I had a couple more colleges than he did that wanted us. How did Rod learn how to sing like that? So that was part of my mom's deal. I was in church. I was in the choir. I know how to play the drums and the guitar. I learned all that. She was keeping me out of trouble, out of harm's way, because I was spending more time doing that stuff too. So that's partially why sports didn't happen till later.
Let's go to who was recruiting you that time. What colleges were you really looking into, or who was hot after you?
I pretty much had most of the Southwest Conference, which most people would say would have been Big 12, 2 years ago? So Texas was one of the major ones that I wanted to go to. Texas A&M, Baylor, obviously, because there's right there in Waco. TCU, Houston, and then I had Oklahoma State, which almost got me also. And then I had Michigan State and was it Arkansas? Yeah. But I chose Iowa because I wanted to play out of state. Because if I played at Texas or any of those schools, it still have been the same Southwest Conference that I had been seeing on Saturday for most of my life. I wanted to play Michigan, Ohio State, see some of these other schools and compete with those. When Iowa came calling, they had Marie Crane. Remember Marie? Marie is from my high school also. So Marie played D tackle for Iowa. So when I came up here on the visit, which was a stacked visit, if I remember, because I know it was me, I know Tavian, I know Gibb. Like we had a lot of dudes from Texas in that.
Was this in the winter time?
Yeah, because we went to the basketball game. I think it was right after Chris Street's thing. because Iowa beat Michigan in a basketball game. That's one reason they got me too, because it was me and Hausia Fuhala that came on the same plane when we came in. I guess it had just snowed the day before, and it was like 40, sunny. It was great. Wasn't really cold. Snow on the ground. I was like, oh yeah, I could do this. And I really got initiated when I got to Iowa because we had to do the 93 flood and all that stuff. I think I seen on Tavian's video, he talked about the PSP program, the summer program that we were able to do. So we did that. We were here in the summer when the flooded Iowa, period, right? So I got initiated that first year real quick to Iowa weather. Yes, that got me in trouble in classes a couple times too, because I was like, in Texas, we get a storm like that, we're not going to school. So I probably missed a couple more classes than I should have because of weather.
Who is recruiting you from Iowa?
It was Coach Patterson who recruited me mostly.
Where else did you take your visits besides Iowa?
I went to Texas. I went to Oklahoma State after Iowa.
That trip sealed the deal for a lot of people then. It was a pretty good class that kind of convinced you to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, great guys, great guys. It's amazing how, like even today, Tavian and I work together right now. So being friends since 17, that's a long time.
There's a lot of history there.
That's from that one decision to commit to coming to a place and trying to reach a goal.
It's amazing. I love it. So you got signed up to come. Talk about your transition into Iowa City. I guess obviously the weather was a different story. And what was that like for you coming from Waco?
Yes, the majority of the population was Caucasian, so that's different. In Waco, it was mostly Black and Hispanic, and we had a little bit of everybody, but at my school, it was mostly Black and Hispanic. But most of my teachers, I was raised to see people for who they are and not what they look like or any of that. So I'm going to judge you for what your actions are to me. So I never had a problem with being in a different situation because my mom always taught me how to, one, be a gentleman, two, present yourself. You walk a certain way, you're proud, you dress nicely. She taught me all the things that have helped me be successful in life back in the day. So I didn't really have too big of a problem with my roommate being from Iowa or from somewhere else or what the race, what their culture is or whatever. I was ready to learn whatever I could learn. School-wise, that was different. I was always naturally smart, like I could get stuff. I ran into the problem of I was so smart in high school that I didn't learn good study habits. Like the work was easy and I wasn't really getting pushed to a certain level where I could really push myself to in education. I didn't even study for the ACT, SAT, and I passed both of them. I didn't know how to study correctly. Once I got to Iowa, and you start taking the classes that you have no interest in, those electives and some of those filler classes that you have to do, I have problems in those, like the big lectures and stuff like that. School-wise, I had to learn how to be a student. So that kind of derailed me a little bit in my college career.
I think everybody went through some kind of adjustment there, yeah, with going from high school to college and you're competing against other kids that are there just for college and you're trying to do sports too, and it's tough.
Yeah, that PSP program actually helped me a lot when we did that in the summer. But you get into that lecture, that's 100 people or however many people in the place holds, but you can get lost in that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the accountability is a part of it too, right? If there's 200 people in the class, they're not going to be like, oh, Rodney didn't show up today. And so you don't feel that pressure to perform and to be engaged in that sense.
You do if you want to play and all the things. Time management of my free time, I would say. Because we had a schedule that we had to do. Like we had practice, you had schoolwork, whatever you had to do. You had training table, you had study hall, all the things. In my free time, I think I could have did a better job of preparing or getting some extra study in it.
I think we all could have done that. It's almost two full-time jobs to go to school and to play football, especially when you started your freshman year. You were traveling on Saturdays and gone Friday nights and times. I guess for me, at least, it was probably number one was football. It was like, okay, you're here to play football. If something's going to suffer, it's not going to be that. At least that's the way I felt.
Yeah. And same. One, football, just competing, that came naturally for me. Like, I don't care how big you are, I'm going to hit you in the face if I need to. That's just how it was. But school, you might have to take a different approach to that. You got to talk to your professors and get to know them. You got to do all these other things that helps you get a possible edge on getting a good grade. If you're not per se interested in the class, so you're not doing your best, but you still got to do that other stuff. I wasn't used to having to do that type of stuff. So once I learned how to be present, make the professor know who you are, know you're trying, ask for help if you need it, that type of stuff, I didn't learn that until as we got older, I started doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a different thing to navigate, especially being that age. So you come in your freshman year, you were one of the, I think, two of us that played.
Were you the only two that played that year from your
Yes.
class?
Yes.
Didn't redshirt? Yeah.
And even more impressive that you were physically gifted enough to do that. It's hard to come in, being a high school kid, like coming in and being that size and strength to be able to compete that way. How did you feel when they were like, okay, we're going to play you? Were you like, oh, wow? Or you felt prepared, or you felt like, how did you feel in that mode?
When I found out that Tavian wouldn't, because I think he had a shoulder or something that he was recovering from, I was talking to Coach Triplets, and I might want a red shirt. And he's, no, you really can do this. You got the talent. You can do this. You know, me trusting my coach and him believing in me that I could do that. So I was like, okay, let's get it.
And would you make that same decision again, or would you redshirt if you had to do it over?
I would redshirt, only because I played, but I didn't play. Because you still had Cliff King. You had Kent Call still in front of me. You had Ernest Crank. Yeah, all these guys that were playing fullback also. And here I am, the freshman, still playing. Yes, I was playing special teams and doing all that stuff. Once those guys left, I could have had a whole nother year or so playing where I might have been the starter or not sharing so much time.
The 97 team probably could have used both of you.
Yeah, that'd have been great. They just looked like they were having so much fun with all that offense. It seemed like they just opened it up when we left. That had to be crazy, having two Heisman candidates in the same year. That's crazy.
Did you think you were going to play that first year? Was that your plan? Or did you think you were going to redshirt? What was the thought going into the camp?
Really, I was just focused on trying to learn the offense, learning what I'm supposed to do, proving that I should be here. I felt like I had to prove myself, but I never strived to play my first year because the stuff they were saying when they come to the house visit, that's back when the coaches actually came to your house to recruit you. They would say, yeah, you come and start right now. My mom said that if that was one of the first things that came out your mouth, the visit was short. My mom would really just run them out the house because she was more worried about making sure I get my education, and then football comes next. When Hayden came, that's what he was speaking. He was speaking, I ain't gonna promise you he's gonna play year one or two, but we're gonna look after him. We're gonna make sure he's going to class. He's saying the right stuff. My mom actually gravitated to that which she also voted Iowa when I was trying to decide where I wanted to go.
Did Coach Fry's Texas background help with that at all?
Yes. So Hayden, he was a groundbreaker for all the stuff he did. I think he recruited one of the first Black players to be on a college football team type deal in the area or whatever that was.
In SMU, yep.
So he was already a legend if you get a chance to play for Coach Fry. And he's a charmer. He charmed us, and with the athletes that I went on a recruiting visit with, that sealed the deal. One thing he knew how to do, which I'm surprised Coach French doesn't have more Texas guys on his team. Coach Fry knew how to go to Texas, and you don't have to get that star running back. But if you look at the guy behind him, he might be just as fast, just as big. He just didn't get the opportunity the other guys got. And he might be a diamond in the rough too. He knew how to recruit those guys and then eventually get those guys in the end when the other people didn't think Iowa was in the running for him at all. Like when I was getting recruited at first, I thought the other running back was going to get more offers than I did, but it eventually switched to me. But Iowa was always top 3 for me.
Let's jump into some of your in-game memories.
Your first time on the field playing, you didn't get a free warm-up game to go through. You thrown in there game 1, right? So that's your Tulsa game you're playing. Maybe start there. What was the feeling like, and did you play that much in that first game?
At that point, I was doing more special team stuff. So not a lot of playing time, but run down on kickoff or a kickoff return, stuff like that. Being from Texas, we always had a lot of people, a lot of bigger stadiums and stuff like that we played in. So for me, just the fact that I played in front of bigger crowds before, it really didn't bother me. I was just worried about somebody trying to blindside me somewhere, just trying to knock my head off, knock the freshman's head off as he's running down the kickoff. I would say probably my best game, as I'm pretty sure you guys remember, was Iowa State, right?
95?
Yeah, so the 9 carries, I think 110 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns. Awesome feeling to actually do what you came here to do and actually get to show out a little bit.
How did you get so many carries? Was it just because you had some good runs that they kept feeding you, or was that part of the game plan that week?
They've always had the trap play or the dive, or they had all those in there every week. It's just when would they call them and if they did. But if Ryan Terry or Tavian hot and we're blocking it up, they're going to get the carries, right? Because they're game breakers like that. But I guess one play I made it into a 15, 20-yard run type deal, had to jump over a guy, had to do some stuff. I think they were saying, okay, this might be his game. So then I actually got the ball. I think Cedric had 100 yards rushing. I had 100 yards rushing. And I think we were trying to stop Troy Davis. I think that's who they had at that time as their running back.
Some serious talent on the field for that game, wasn't there?
And you had, I know some of these guys because later on I actually played with some of these guys that was on the Iowa State team at that time, like a Todd Doxson who actually went to the Dolphins and was the backup quarterback for Marino at that time. He was the option quarterback that they had at Iowa State. Mike Horacek was one of their wide receivers. I played with him a long time later on in life. Yes, sir.
What else comes to mind for memories or games or plays?
I think it was Northern Illinois. We were on the goal line and we ran a power dive. So I actually had a blocker at that time. I had my boy Aaron Granquist lead me into the linebacker, and then the middle linebacker shot through and met me in the hole, and I decleated him, and his feet were in the air. Probably one of my hardest touchdown runs I've had. That was super cool. The Penn State game, I had a long catch, trail route, went for about 35, 40 yards probably is what it was. Matter of fact, my first game that I got in, first freshman year, flat route, I had to bump the end when I came off, and then I ran a flat route. And Burmaster threw me the ball. I gave the cornerback a little two-step, and then I hit the sideline and went for about another probably 30 yards or whatever. And the dude horse-collared me from the back. But the funny part was the dude was like, man, I didn't know Iowa guys were that fast. I think that was my first play, my first receiving play.
Yeah, I remember the Iowa State game. I think just busting that game open. I feel like we're struggling, but your plays seemed to just put an end to that. And took control of the game again. So not only just good runs, but like critical ones at the right times.
Yeah, I remember you getting in that first game. I think I was amazed that you were getting in and playing. I was like, well, wow, that's something special. It was like you were a gifted athlete to be able to pull that off being that young. So I think that was what sticks in my memory the most.
Yeah.
What was your workout routine like? I know that's your life now, is like training people. When did that become like pretty serious for you? Were you hitting the weights pretty good in high school, or did it take off in college or after college?
Part of it was the tumbling stuff. So me doing push-ups to be able to do a backflip, or me walking on my hands and doing all that type of stuff. That's building strength. Me doing pull-ups, not knowing that I'm doing pull-ups, but just doing pull-ups to get on top of a house or just doing stuff like that. That kind of built me up already, not knowing what I was doing, right? And all the jumping and the sprinting and doing all that stuff. Compared to most of the other guys, I was a bigger guy and I was doing the same stuff. So that was impressive also. But once I got to high school, my coach was the fundamental lifts, squat, bench press, deadlift, just stuff like that. Nothing real crazy. None of the stuff we're doing now with all the variations and stuff like that. And then in Texas, if you play football 9 times out of 10, your coach is making you run track, just development from running. So when I came to Iowa and actually got into Paul Longo's stuff that we were doing, and I think my body took off even more at that time. But I think I really got into it after the ACL. So I did my ACL my junior year, and I think I was one of the first to come back because you were out for a year before you could come back. And I think I came back in 9 months, if I'm not mistaken. So I shattered that time because I was doing extra. I was doing stuff on my own. I was doing stuff that Ed Crowley and them had me doing. Yeah, that drove fitness for me. So I wish I would have known that I wanted to do more fitness stuff when I went into college. Then I wouldn't have had some of those classes that I wasn't in.
Tell us about the ACL. Was that an injury or just wear and tear, or?
Yeah, that was injury. That was that Northwestern Cinderella year that they went to the Rose Bowl, right? And we played them at Northwestern, and they
freezing cold game.
And it snowed the night before, and it still had kind of ice pieces on the ground. The first play, I was going to kick out the end. I don't remember the play, but I know I was kicking out the end, and the referee called the play dead. And me and the defensive end we just barely bumped. But when we bumped, I stepped on a piece of ice like right there, and then my ACL just went. And it was so cold at that time that I was walking around. I was trying to warm up because I didn't know I tore it at all at that time. I was just thinking, dang, my knee hurt. Try to walk it off and do all the things. But then, yeah, it turned out to be torn ACL. Yeah. I would say if that wouldn't have happened, I probably would have had a lot different career. I think at that time, you'll lose a little focus. Is this it? Type deal. Some people don't come back from this type of stuff and be the same. But I think if I hadn't got injured, I think my projection of what I could have done would have been a lot higher. I think my intentions would have me to focus more on the things I need to do to keep being able to do that. So I did have a spurt of time where I got depressed and dealt with some of that stuff. But I worked my way back and came back and played good when I did come back and play, to the point where I got invited to NFL camp and stuff like that.
So you missed all of spring ball and the bowl game and then came back in the summer. What percentage of strength did you feel going into camp our senior year? Like 80%, or would you feel like you're close to 100%?
I'd say I was probably, realistically now, I'd say I was probably 85% ready, but I didn't want to wear the brace, all the heels and all the things I was doing to get ready. I was doing without the brace. And then when I got here, they made me wear the brace, which also I felt like slowed me down, gave me limited mobility. But I made it work for the opportunities I got. Still was able to break out and break some runs and do all that. But the last Alamo Bowl against Texas Tech was the one game I got to not wear it. And that's the one I broke a run to the outside and scored. Was it the last touchdown we scored, if I'm not mistaken?
Raiders. Full house backfield. Filer bounces it outside at the 5. He'll score. Tavian Banks with an outstanding block on the play to get him outside. They're trying to get every kid from Texas to score a touchdown tonight. He's from Waco.
Black stripes on it, like all their stickers were off.
Great memory. And game that we was playing for our brother. Yeah, his mom had gotten a car wreck, if I'm not mistaken.
She died and they all got banged up a bit, but she passed.
So that's why we took the stickers off. Everybody was playing with their heart on their shoulders. That's hard, especially for those who I only met her a couple times because we were on offense. But from what I hear, she was great for a lot of the defensive players.
Amazing.
And over time, too. There was a lot of guys that they took in under their wing. The family did.
For years, they've been having people stay at their house and rent out the basement. Yeah, they've been well connected. I think his dad played at Iowa too, but she took care of a lot of those guys.
Yep.
So let's fast forward to after college. You went to San Diego, I think. Talk to us about that.
Do you think you're going to get drafted? How did pro days go? Did you get teams talking to you? Walk us through all of that.
Yeah, I had mainly the Chargers at the pro day workouts. San Diego and the other team actually had a conversation with me. One was actually telling me, I remember it plainly, like they didn't have you running too many like real routes in your play. I was just doing our basic flat route, wheel route. Fullbacks, we weren't doing all the things that maybe Tavian and Cedric were doing. We were doing swing route, stuff like that. But he said, you got good hands and we can work with some of your talents. So that was good. My pro days for as performances, I think I did good, did just enough. I got a call around pick 10 of the third round, and the Cowboys called me and said, we're thinking about taking you in the third round with our pick. How would you like to be a Cowboy? And I was like, I would love it. I'm from Texas. I grew up. I love Herschel Walker, 34. I started wearing 34. They said, okay, but they end up taking Nikki Sualua, that block for Eddie George, at Ohio State. That's who they ended up taking. And then as soon as the draft was done, San Diego called me asking me to come to camp. So I went to San Diego. They had a loaded fullback roster with some veterans. We had Caldwell Gardner, who blocked for Thurman Thomas at Buffalo. He was the older guy. He was more of your traditional fullback. And then we had Aaron Craver that blocked for Terrell Davis, Denver's Super Bowl run. He went to Fresno State, if I'm not mistaken. So he was the starter. And then I was the young guy coming in.
What teams that carry two, or would they carry one?
At that time, they carried two, but I guess they liked my numbers and what my film showed, thinking that I possibly could probably teach me some things. So I would be just a guy that's coming in that's eventually going to take over.
That's got to be a rough experience to have the Cowboys call you in round 3 and then fall away past the 7th. That's got to be like a letdown.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was devastated because that would have been a dream job at that point. You know, now you're going back home. Now, you know, my mom's clothes, just all the family stuff. My coaches from both Waco and just guys who poured into me in Houston too, or just family. It would have meant so much just to make the team at the Cowboys. But it didn't happen. So then I was like, okay, what's next? And when I was asking that, that's when the phone rang and they asked me if I wanted to be a Charger. And I was like, yeah, I'll come to camp and all the things. You know what was very surprising when I walked into the locker room, though, the Chargers locker room. Like even at Iowa, yeah, we had big linemen, but they were big linemen. These guys look like, I think one guy was a D tackle. He went to Florida State. Wouldn't have thought he was a football player if I didn't know. But the dude obviously had skill and technique and talent and all that stuff, but he just didn't look the part that I was used to seeing. And then you have your phenoms, Rodney Harrison, guys like that. Now you're in the pros. I tell you what, that probably was some of the best soul searching I had to do in that experience. Because remember, I told you, like, for as school, right? I was pushed to the point where I had to learn how to do something better and learn how to study, my study habits to be better. Once I got to San Diego, that kicked in because that playbook was so much bigger and now your competition level is higher. And if you're not getting it, what happens? You go home, right? With that being said, me being the third string, most of my reps that I got would have been against, if I had an ISO block, it would have been junior Seau. If I had a outside kickout block, 9 times out of 10, it would have been junior Seau. You hear about these guys who can just see the play, and he was one of those guys who would shift the whole defense and get out of position and go to somebody else's position and make the play. That's how much film he'd watch. And mindset-wise for me, one, like I said before, I was never scared of anybody. We're going to butt head. If I got to the point where I could really block junior Seau, who could I not block at that time? You know what I'm saying? We've already went against Kevin Hardy in Illinois and Simeon Rice and LeVar Arrington at Penn State. We didn't win against all these dudes, but we talk about junior Seau, who was the Ray Lewis of that era. Yeah, I got to the point where we were going toe-to-toe after a while. And after camp, I got put on practice squad. So I was on practice squad my first year. And then I came back the next year. And then that's when they drafted Ryan Leaf, if I'm not mistaken. At that time, Kevin Gilbride decided he went more into an H-back offense where the fullbacks were out. So they didn't need the fullback anymore. So all three of us got cut that next year. But one thing to say about Junior, he was pissed that they were letting me go. And just to comment to his character that he had, the dude came because he knew I was a rookie. He knew I didn't get no signing bonus or anything like that. He let me stay at his house. He had a beach home right on La Jolla Beach over there. Let me stay there for a week just to chill out and just collect my thoughts and see what I was going to do. And then I gave him a big hug and thanked him for doing that. But that's something that he didn't have to do. But he was upset that they let me go because he was like, you prepared me for what I had to do during the week and during the season. You blocked me better than most of the guys that I went against. So if there's anything you need from me to help you get on a different team or whatever, just let me know. So that meant a lot to me from supposedly at that time one of the best that's done it. And it's sad to hear that he succumbed to some of the stuff after all those years.
Mom, Dad, let's talk about tackle football. I just learned about CTE, the brain disease caused by repeated hits to the head. The more years I play, the more I'm at risk. If you put me in tackle today...
By the time I'm a senior in high school, I'll have played 13 years of tackle football. I could already have CTE, and it will continue to destroy my brain even after I stop playing. So by the time I'm your age,
I could be fighting depression, struggling to keep my thoughts straight. I could become violent, even towards my own children. When I'm your age, what will matter to me is not my youth football career, but that, like you, I'm a great parent and I can provide for my family.
So please, keep me out of tackle football until I'm 14.
So from there, I went home for a little bit, helped my mom out, set her up a little bit so she didn't have to pay rent or mortgage for a couple months or whatever. And then I get a call from the Barnstormers. So that's how I ended up back here in Des Moines. I got a call from Coach Gregory, and he was one of the guys that came up also during pro day and talked to me and brought me up to come and play with the Barnstormers, which was cool because at that time, the Barnstormers were a combination of former Iowa players and UNI players and Iowa State players. I got to come here and I played with my guy, Larry Blue and Carlos James. And then over the years, because I played here twice, I played here 99 and 2000. And then I came back here and retired in 2012 was my last year. So I played another 4 years here at the end of my career. So I got to play with Brad Banks and Pete Traynor and some of my other Hawk brothers that I got to know even more. Arena, far as fun and the use of my abilities, was probably the perfect fit. I fit arena better than I did NFL. You just stuck in one position, right? You're stuck at fullback for the most part. But my talents might be more than that. So in my arena career, I've played running back, tight end, middle linebacker, defensive end, weak side linebacker. I've done a couple kick returns. I felt like my talent was used more in that league, more than just fullback at NFL level. And at that time, the dwindling of the position, like it never went out where nobody used a fullback, but it was less teams using fullbacks at that time. Like I knew a lot of fullbacks like Dan Alexander, who played at Nebraska, a lot of guys who actually could decently run the ball or block pretty good gravitated to the arena league because we were utilized.
Were you involved when the league switched and then the Iowa team, I don't remember what years they were, didn't they move the whole team to New York?
Yes. So 99, and 2000 were the last original years here. And then we got sold to New York, then became the New York Dragons. I went with them to New York, and that's when I got a chance with the Jets. I got on with the Jets for a little bit. Ended up being on practice squad for a little bit. Got released from that. They brought me back at the end of the season, and it was the Raiders. And if we win, we make the playoffs. And if we lose, we're out. And I think we lost, so I didn't even get to play at all or anything like that. So this was what? I think it was Herm Edwards' era of the Jets. It would have been right before 9/11 happened. When I got released from that, got home, probably like maybe 2 weeks later, 9/11 happened. So that was a blessing also. And actually, David Robinson was on that team at that same time too. Had a great time there. At that time, it was another numbers game. They had just re-signed Gerald Soule. I think that was his name, Gerald. So they had Richie Anderson, who was their main featured fullback, who was more of a receiving fullback back in the day. And then Gerald Soule was their backup, and they had just re-signed him and gave him a nice little signing bonus. And then I was competing with him. However numbers happen, they happen.
Were you on practice squad or were you on the roster?
With them, I would have only been on the roster that last game of the season, but it didn't happen. They didn't bring me on until after the season was done. So we were doing OTAs and stuff like that, getting ready for the next season.
Did you go back to arena after that, or any other tryouts or workouts for other teams?
No, I would have, but at that time, I think it was a younger guy who was the assistant to the GM at the Jets. He ended up getting the general manager's job at Dallas Cowboys maybe 2 years later. So after I got released from the Jets, I went back and played 2 more years in New York. And then I went to Las Vegas Gladiators for 2 years. And then I think he called me asking if I would come to camp. Do I have a legit chance to make the team, or am I just a camp body? At this point, I'm older. I got a wife and kids now. So I was like, if I'm just a camp body, I think I'm good. I'm going to pass on that, but thank you. So that's what I did. No complaints on that, because financially at that time, that would have put us in a rut, because we're going to camp and then I'm losing out. And at that time, Arena was actually paying decent money at that time. And basically, you're playing for 6 months and you're getting from the top guy, which is usually your quarterbacks, they were making 100,000, something like that. It's pretty good money for Arena. And then like your rookie might get 35, 40, depending on where they're at. And then everybody's in between there. So I was making pretty good money at that time. That would have put a big damper in just for a chance to make a team. But if I wasn't having the fun and doing the things that I was doing in Arena, I probably would have took that chance. But we were already thinking about starting the business and all the things. So just the mindset was in a different place at that time.
So when you moved to New York, you were like, wow, the standard of living just doubled. Do you think it's much more expensive out there?
It's not Des Moines or Waco.
See, the thing is too, though, you getting your salary and they pay for housing. You don't have to pay for housing. All you paying for is food and your car or your transportation. That's it. So it's a great deal for 6 months. And then when you go home, you can do whatever you do at home for the rest of the year. So it was a great situation at that time.
Would you get a job on this 6 months off or no?
Yeah, because then that's when I was starting to train and doing all that stuff. So that's when all that started. After we left New York, I think in New York is where my wife took her first Pilates class. And then when we went home, that's when she said she wanted to start a Pilates studio and all that stuff. So that's when we started the family business from that.
Wrap up your arena career. You came back to Iowa.
Yeah.
And then you finished out with the Barnstormers. Did you go like through the AF2 thing and all that transition, or was it still always Arena 1?
This was, for the most part, Arena 1. And then I played in Vegas. I went to Tampa. And in Tampa, I think that was the year that the Arena League decided to go bankrupt. I think that was that year. So via text message, right? No phone calls, no nothing. They said your contracts are done, your insurance, all that stuff, it ceases now. Like you basically just cut the cord. So that sucked. So we had about 2 years. They started the Arena 2 League is what they did.
I played in the Arena 2 League when it started because I had a full-time job and I could do that part-time for a couple of years with Quad Cities.
Because I know I came back home and I helped Coach Gregory because he came back here after New York, started the Barnstormers here, and then asked me to come and help coach a little bit. I was like the strength coach, did some of that. And then the next year was when I was able to get back going in it. And the only reason I did that because I was doing training and it was a good marketing piece for my training, the studio and all the things. Come work with Rodney Filer, all the stuff. So it's just mainly a marketing piece. But I did it in a way that I could do camps, I could do personal training groups. So did all that. So it worked out great.
Yeah,
so
you played how many years? 13, 14 years?
Yeah, arena football, 13 years.
It's incredible. I don't know how many other people had that kind of longevity, but you got to be up there.
Yeah, I think it helped because I was a good blocker. I was usually recruited by the passing teams because they like to have the quarterback stand back there for I don't know how long. And so I was usually on the top passing team in the league. To my credit, I did reach 1,000 yards rushing on those teams. And I probably have 100 less carries than most of the guys who have that 1,000-yard mark. So I'm confident in that. And I'm still top 10 to this day.
Arena Bowl Hall of Fame.
That's a lot for arena football. They don't run that ball very much.
Right. I hope that would be great. I would love to be recognized. And I'm the little brother to the big uglies, is what they used to call it. The linemen never really get a lot of praise or whatever. But I made the most of it. You've probably seen a couple dance moves on the news a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
As I was saying in the story, my wife and I started Gigi's Pilates and personal training. We're right about 20 years now. Just start Pilates certification hub for, one of them in the Midwest. So that's one of the top certifications for Pilates. She was the instructor trainer for that. I've also had a couple CrossFits, and I'm doing performance training, and I am the youth director at the Grub YMCA. Our brother, Tavian Banks, is the executive director at the Grub, and we had an incident here in Des Moines at one of the high schools. There was a shooting at the school, and some of the kids that were involved in it were football players that were at a school that had just discontinued the football program. So if the football program was going, those kids probably wouldn't have did what they did. Basically, is what the situation was. So I, at that time, was like, how can I make a bigger difference? Because those kids, that could be me. Just hanging around the wrong kids, somebody doing something, you get in trouble, your life could go a different route. So I wanted to give back. So I contacted Tavian and asked if he had any positions available so that I could try to give back to the community. They had a youth director open, and it's been a little over 3 years now that we've been working together at the Grub YMCA. But in the evening, I do my own training. So I do performance training and mentoring for athletes.
That's great, man.
And you find time to still work out.
Well,
Or do you work it in with your other workouts?
Yeah. So I'm working out all the time. If it's not with the client or the youngster that I'm working, it's with my son, just getting him right. I'm always trying to find ways to stay in shape. So I do a gambit of all things: boxing, kickboxing, lifting, CrossFit, swimming, bike riding. I try to do a little bit of everything just so I don't wear out a joint or whatever. So you're not nursing injuries and stuff like that. So it's pretty much worked out for me for the most part, staying healthy.
What kind of advice would you give for our ex-teammates as we get into our 50s? And what kind of advice would you give for them?
One, start slow. You got to leave your ego at the door. That's one of the problems we have. We're used to doing a certain thing a certain way. I've never been one that always wanted to be one of the strongest in the gym. I just did what I had to do, and just whatever results were, that's what happened. But take it slow and just do the fundamental stuff. Like, you ain't got to do all the fancy stuff. Just do normal stuff and just do it consistently. That's it. Even if you go walk 30 minutes in your day, that's putting you on the right track to getting to where you want to be. And you can gradually build on that to do more. There's a gambit of different things that one can go with, depending on what their goals are. It could be weight loss. It could be gain muscle. It could be just feel better and have more energy. It could be all those things have different ways to get that done. So just start slow, be consistent is the main thing.
That's great.
Yeah. And if you need advice, let me know. Whoever it is, you can contact me. I still get guys that they scared to work out with me just because they think I'm about to put all this weight on just because I look the size or whatever. But I'm like, you don't have to lift what I lift. You just do what you can do. Don't worry about what I'm doing, because this is for you. This is your path and your journey. So we got to leave our egos at the door, because that's when you get hurt. When I was at Iowa, I did 500-pound squat. That was 20 years ago. You're probably not doing that right now, buddy.
Rodney, I think that's a great show for us. Thanks a lot for coming on and telling us your story. It's
great to catch up with you again.
Great to catch up, and appreciate you.
Too long.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, good to hear from you.
Yes, sir.
Even people that know you well probably don't know all these stories.
All right, brother.
Thanks.
All right, take care, man. Thanks.